Hey Flip Nation, Flip Man here. Hey, awesome news guys. I have created a new ebook on how to scale your business to 6 figures fixing and flipping. I want you guys to check it out. It's free. Go to my Instagram at flippin_az and register to get your free ebook on how to scale 6 figures and fix and flip business.
Flip Man, and I wanted to welcome everyone to our episode 52 of Cut the Curve, where I interview moguls, mentors, and serial entrepreneurs. I've been at flipping now the last 20 years in Arizona, flipped over 1,000 homes, and decided to hop on social during the pandemic, and so now we got our 52nd episode, and I have with me Carly, who's my co-host once a week, and she is new to the entrepreneurial space. She does a lot with social and branding, and she's going to help me ask some really great questions for our guests. And our guest today is a special guest out of Arizona in my backyard here. So Corey Peterson, Kahuna Investments, I believe. Corey started in single family, and then in 2011 he decided to go into the multifamily. He's been killing it ever since, so he's going to kind of share his journey and what you guys can do as far as newbies, or if you're interested in transitioning to multifamily. So welcome you guys, Carly and Corey, today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Super excited.
Awesome to have you, Corey. So when did you get into the real estate game? Were you in corporate, or like when did this all transition from, you know, having your own multiple to businesses, running the multifamilies? When did you start your journey, Corey?
I started my journey almost 19 years ago. So I was actually a used car salesman. That guy. I barely made it out of high school. Probably wasn't voted most likely to succeed. Barely made it out of high school. So I'm a kind of a rags to riches story. And but I always had big dreams and goals. I just didn't have a college degree, which I think is useless, by the way. So sorry if I offended anybody if you got one, but that's great. But it never really served me. But I have been on a journey of education. So real quick story, 19 years ago now, my life changed forever. I went to Hawaii and I met this guy named Bruce, which is, he's my first mentor. His name is Bruce. I call him Bruce Wayne. He wasn't Batman, but he was loaded. And my mom was actually married to him. And my mom was real pretty, and so Bruce had a lot of money. Don't judge my mom. That was her hustle. My mom got me to go to Hawaii, and I got to bring my girlfriend, now my wife of 18 years, okay? And we get there, and Bruce has got a house right on the beach. And it was just amazing. This is in Kauai, the Garden Island, and it was just amazing. I remember walking out on the beach, and we watched the sun come up, and I looked back over on the other side of the cove, and there's Bruce's house. I was like, what does this guy do? Because Bruce had the two things that I think most of us really want, which is time and money. And Bruce had them both. There was no doubt, no mistaking that he had them. And so I had to ask the question, Bruce, what do you do? And guess what he said? He said that he was in real estate and that he owned apartment complexes. And so I wish the story got better, but it doesn't, because Bruce was still a grumpy old man. But but I left the island thinking that he was the big kahuna. And so and then about in 2004, I read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And when I read it, all I could was like, that's Bruce. That's what Bruce does. Bruce is in real estate. And I knew right there that's what I wanted to do. So I read every book I could. And in 2005, I was ready to start my own company and set out my path. And I thought, what do I name my company? And then it came to me, and I was like, I want to be like Bruce. I want to be the big kahuna. So I called it Kahuna Investments. is the name of my company, because I wanted to be the big kahuna, just like Bruce. And like any story, I started off as a wholesaler, right? Because I had no money, I had no credit, I had a dream, but what do you do? I actually came out to Arizona as a financial advisor. I actually got a better job, and they actually told me if you can pass the test, you can sell stocks, bonds, and securities. That's the hardest test I ever studied for, and I made a 72, which is just enough to pass. You got to make 70. And I became a financial advisor. And I actually moved out to Arizona. But I was really, my real passion was to do real estate. But I was highlighting part-time as a financial advisor. I was going to RIAs and stuff like that, trying to figure out how to do real estate, learning consumer education. And eventually, I started getting a little bit of traction in wholesaling. And so I started wholesaling, and then the market crashed. And when the market crashed, dude, anybody that I was a financial advisor with, that I just made any investments, went to zero. And my heart left the business. And honestly, I got fired because my numbers sucked. Because it was a horrible time. And I realized I had no control. Here I'm taking people's money, and it's not really working out the way that we wanted to. And I truly had no control. So my heart left the business, so did my sales. And then I found myself squarely in hey, what are you going to do? And I remember at that time, it's 2009, that's when I committed to real estate. I started the company in 2005, but I committed to real estate in 2009. And I'm talking about a deep down, everything that I am commitment that I was going to do whatever it took. I was going to burn every bridge. I'd work, if I had to work till 3 o'clock in the morning every night, I was willing to do the work. I didn't care. And from that point on, my life changed dramatically, very quickly. So I started going to the RIAs. I really started, and then I got smart about it, because what Edward Jones had taught me, Edward Jones taught me the money game, by the way, and I'm going to share that with you guys here in a minute. But and how to find money, how to attract capital, how to talk to capital, and know all the smart words, right? But more importantly, it taught me how to network. And so when I'm going to the RIAs, I'm not just going to the RIAs just to sit down. I go there, and first of all, you go find whoever's the owner of the RIA or whoever's the leader, and you got to go over there and say, hey, listen, I'm new. Can you point out some of the players in your room? Can you show me who the guys are that are really doing deals? And they'll always do. Oh yeah, well, John Smith, whatever. And so then guess who sat next to him? Me. I'm just hey, what's going on? And I'm like, well, where do you like to buy? What's your deal look like? And I just got my pen going out, right? How much rehab do you like? What part of town? How much profit do you want to make? I'm like, that's amazing. You wouldn't believe this, but I find deals like this all the time. Would you pay me a wholesaling fee? They're like, yeah, if you found a deal like that, of course, yeah. And so I'm like, great. And I wasn't even a realtor, but I'd go find realtors to give me their access to the MLS. Because, even though they're not supposed to, but, if you show them how to get paid for it, they'll do it. And so, because they weren't going to do the work that I was going to do. And I started becoming an expert researching properties, finding, different subdivisions that I knew everything about the subdivision. So when a property went on the market, and actually Santan Valley, which is about 30 minutes from me, is where I cleaned up. I cleaned up in Santan Valley, man. I owned... I was wholesaling, probably about 5 homes a month. That was bad. But I was finally full-time engaged in real estate, and I was making a little bit of money. But I still had a problem. Mm-hmm. And the problem was I wasn't making all of the money. Because I had actually become kind of a slave to all the guys that had the money, right? So they're like, hey, listen, we'll pay you the fee. But then I was ended up managing the rehabs. And they're making $25,000, $30,000 rips on properties that I found that I knew were deals, but I just didn't have the dough. And I was like, man, I got to figure this out. And so I played racquetball with one of my ex-clients. His name's Carl. And I was telling Carl's watching me start to kind of be successful. And I was like, Carl, man, and Carl lived in a retirement community. I was like, dude, if there's an opportunity, Carl's got to know somebody. And so I go, Carl, listen, you see what I'm doing? I'm making $3,000. My investors are making 20. I could probably pay interest and give them a note and deed of trust, and make somebody's money work harder. I go, do you know anybody in your retirement community? Would you ask around? And he's like, well, let me see what I can do. Well, the next day, guess who calls? And it's Carl. He goes, Corey, do you still want to do that 12%? Because I was giving him a 12% return. And I was like, yeah. And in the back of my mind, I was like, dude, Carl found somebody. He goes, Corey, you don't know this, but my home's totally paid for. I can borrow money at 3%. You give me 12, I make a spread. How much money do you need? Now, at that point in time, you're kind of like, okay, here's the big question, right? How much money? Okay. And I just came out with, I said, Carl, I need $85,000. And there was a slight pause. And then Carl's like, yeah, okay, yeah. Where do you want me to send the money? And dude, I never thought that far ahead. I was like, but my jaw dropped down to the ground. I eventually figured out that you just got to send it to the title company. But I will equate that moment to, I went into a telephone as Clark Kent, and I spun around that son of a bitch, and I was like, I raised private money. I was Superman. Because the truth is, I had a lot of limiting beliefs about myself and my ability to raise capital. Would someone trust me? Would they know that I'd filed bankruptcy? Would they know that I wasn't a great money manager myself? Would they? And what I found is no one cares. No one cares, but it broke every limiting belief about myself and how I perceived money and how I was taught money. And from that moment on, once I raised my first piece, I realized I could do it. And so then I finally started looking around and say, well, who else is raising money and what do they do? And so I quickly discovered that first of all, and by doing it the way I did Carl, I learned two secrets. Number one, and you guys should probably write this down, is never ask people for money. Never ask people for money. I never asked Carl for money. I asked Carl, which is number two, who do you know? And the right people will always self-select. And so what I've learned is this: if you're doing single family, you can have what's called a private money program. And what a private money program does is just dictates and shows people how you take investors' capital and how they can fund a deal in the journey. And what I find is, hey, listen, when I have somebody new, this is back when I was doing wholesaling or fix and flips, was, hey, let me show you my process, because I really think you're the kind of person that could give me a referral of somebody that you know. And I really trust your opinion. Can you poke some holes in my business plan? And so what did I just do? I asked them to critically look at what I'm doing, and I'm not even asking them for money. I'm like, hey, I really think could be a great referral source, and I just value your opinion. And that was my pitch. That was it. And I just went and shared that story with as many people as possible. And at the end, people would go back and say, well, Corey, what about me? Ask me? Well, sure. And so that's how I started raising money. And by 2010, I had maybe about $3 or $4 million on the street flipping homes, and life was pretty good. I say pretty good, but it wasn't great. And the really reason is because I think this is, and I know I'm like monologuing here a lot, guys, so you can come and ask me questions anytime. But I'll continue the story almost, because so here's the piece, the turn where I got into multifamily was this. And I think a lot of people have this problem. In that period of time, I was starting to become very successful, and it was almost the thing that killed me, because I became the guy that did it all. And my phone was attached to my ear. I worked 24/7 like a banshee. I was finding the deals, finding the money, doing all the rehabs. I was the one-man band that did everything, and at my kids' and wife's expense. I pride myself on being a full-time dad, but what I found myself doing was become a holic, and I could never be present. And to the point where one day it was like a Friday, and my son's like, hey, Dad, are you going to come to my soccer game? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there, son. No problem. It was like 3 o'clock on Saturday. But inside, internally, I was like, dude, I got 3 properties that I didn't finish looking at. I've got to go see them. So I'm like, I'll wake up early in the morning. I'll go to these properties and I'll be back by 3 o'clock to watch my son's game. And the long story short is, dude, I got there at the end of the game. And this is the part that's, so it's hard to talk about it, but I'm going to do it, is my son came off the field, dude, and I'll never forget it. Like, it's really, this is a pain story, man. And he was crying, dude, and he said, "Dad, you promised." And to this day, it still hurts me to talk about it, right? Because, like, that pain that you see in your kids' eyes when you disappoint them is the realest and truest form of pain that you'll ever experience as a parent. And I felt like a complete failure, because what I just done was I put money in front of my family and the pursuit of it. And I just knew it wasn't the way. And kids are loving, they're very forgiving. You know, he still wants to get in the car with me, and I'm taking him home. And I mean, he's got this that kind of cry, dude, and it's just killing me as I take my son home. And I drop him off, and my wife looks at me and she's like, "You got to fix this right now." And I drove in my car, got my truck, and I just driving around kind of aimlessly, and I'm cussing out. So I'm calling myself, "You son of a bitch." You know, I'm beating myself up, and I'm doing it. I'm full at it. I'm just so mad at myself. And finally, I looked up at God and said, "God, forgive me." You know, I asked for forgiveness, and finally I found peace. And really, you know, God's grace came on me, and then I finally had a calmness, and then it happened, man. I drove by this apartment complex, and I've driven by an apartment complex a million times, right? And I used to say, I wish I could own an apartment complex. But this time, in that broken state, full empty, Jesus probably taken the wheel. I drove by this apartment complex, and I asked myself a simple question: how can I own an apartment complex? And when I framed it correctly, that I gave myself the ability to try to like figure it out, my mind flashed back to Bruce. See, Bruce said he was in real estate, but he owned apartments. Bruce had time and money. And I knew right there that was the answer, full-fledged. I knew that was it. I mean, I flipped a U-turn. This is back when you buy books. I went to Barnes & Nobles, and I bought every book I could on commercial real estate. Found my first mentor, flew to Boston. His name's Dave Lindahl. Learned the whole multifamily game. And in 2011, I bought my first multifamily property. I bought it for $3.2 million. I raised $1.4 million of private money, other people's money. I held that property for 5 years. I sold it about, I think, 3 years ago for $8.8 million. Made $4.7 million in that property. We bought many other properties since then, apartments, but that was the property that set me free for the rest of my life. And so now I live what I call the cash flow life, and sunsets and palm trees. And I just vowed to myself that I would never get myself on that hamster wheel again of hustling and grinding to exhaustion. And so that's my story.
Wow.
Loved it.
Incredible. Thank you for deep diving straight into that.
Yeah, 100% impact, Corey. Time is precious, of course, and kids grow, and it's, I'd say, the most important thing to
You get 18 summers, man. You get 18 summers. I mean, that's what you get. You get 18 summers. And you don't just get the summers. You get it all if you want it, right? But you got to choose to it. So the way I live my life now is radically different than when I first started real estate. What I do now is I take my family and my vacations and all the things that are important. My kids are in high school right now, and my son is playing football. My daughter plays soccer, and I don't miss. I put my schedule and I time block it, and then my business has to fit in the cracks. My business goes on top, and it has to fit in the cracks. or I don't do it. And so there's 2 letters, 1 word. It's called no. And you got to learn to say no.
Yes. 100%.
You got to. And sometimes you got to say it to yourself. No, I'm not working past 5 o'clock. No, I'm not going to work past this. I'm going to get out of my office. You know, and the mastering of no is hard.
It's a very hard, Corey. And like, what would you tell some young viewers? I mean, again, they're hustling. They see you doing well. They see me doing big things. It's not easy. And again, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes along with it. At what expense, though? I definitely would ask you that. So, like, what do you tell those that are 25, 28, have young kids, family, but they still got to be out there grinding to flip, wholesale, you know, because multi-unit perception is like, you need to do your flips, you need to do your wholesale first, and then scale to multi-unit. So what advice would you give some of those people?
Learn to sprint and marathon. Okay? Sprint and marathon. You can sprint. Like sometimes you got to burn the midnight oil. I get it, right? I've been there. We've all been there. Sometimes you got to have extreme focus, but you can only have that extreme focus for a certain amount of time before you get to exhaustion where you're going to hurt yourself, right? So then you've got to learn to marathon, right? So there's times when you've got a new project or you're starting a new system, you may have to really get in there and spend time to build the system to get it all tweaked. But once you get that done, you've got to give yourself time to marathon. And so I believe in time blocking. I'm just going to tell you, all this can be solved with time blocking, because even if you're real honest with yourself, a lot of us waste our effing time. Can I just be honest? You waste your time. Right. So your time management sucks. So get better at it. Like, don't make excuses. You just got to get better at it. And I finally had to come to that realization. I got to get better at time management. I time block my shit. Pardon me, I just cussed. I'm sorry. But this is where I get passionate about, because this is where people make mistakes. Is like, dude, if you want to be home to watch your kid's game, time block that crap, right? Like, then you don't miss. And trust me, we can all find us. Like, think about when you go on a nice big vacation, you got all these things you got to wrap up. Don't we all wrap them all up before we go so we can enjoy our vacation? Seems like it always gets done. Have that type of mentality, though, and just put it every week. Just get your stuff done. Be very task orientated. Use systems. Use Asana. We use Asana task management software for us and my team because it keeps us on track. Time block our calendars because it keeps us on track. Those little things, honestly, will help you in that endeavor, because I don't think, even today, if I was to tell myself back when I was 20, I think I could have done a little bit. Now, I still think I would have had to. Sometimes when you're learning information, you've got to sit there and just absorb it. And it takes time to absorb it. I remember, like, when I first started, I would sit there, you know, I put the kids to bed. But see, I understood my time block. My kids went to bed at 8 o'clock when they were young. So from 8 to 12, that's maybe where I'm going to do a little grind, right? I was going to get on the MLS. I was going to search for my properties. I was going to research subdivisions. But I found the time that didn't interrupt within my family time, you know, until I really, you know, got so slammed with money. I was doing it right in the beginning, and then I let it go, right? And so I just want to encourage people not to make that same mistake that I made.
Yeah,
I think it's a big mistake.
You're very fortunate, Corey, that God called you to change your ways. I mean, we talk about addictions and mental health. In working, definitely be addiction, right? So, like, you're lucky that you were able to change it when he was young enough. So, you know, it could have been a lot worse, because we all want success, but I think at what cost?
The kids don't ever care about money. So, I never cared about money, right? Like, the only valuable commodity is time to your kids.
Yep, they just
want your family.
He He just wants to hang out with you. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, that's the commodity that we're trading, and so don't trade it for your kids. I mean, give your kids that, because that's the one thing they'll remember. And again, they grow up. I mean, I grew up from my family, and I had a great. I think what really would help me was I did get that from my dad. My dad was there. My grandpa was always there. He never missed anything, and I just had that sense, and so I knew I was screwing up. And when I saw it happen, when I got checked on it, when my son checked me, it cut so deep that I just knew it was an about face, man. Like, nope, not going there. This is the wrong path. I need to fix it immediately. And I did, but it was still painful. It's still today painful to talk about, right? Because that's a real truth, to have to admit that you fail as a parent, or, you know, even though I'm successful now, but like the pain, if I go back and think about it, was real. And I think all of us, if we were, be honest, we failed our kids in some way, shape, or form down the road, and that's part of life. But you know, to do it in a big way is a little harder.
Yeah, and again, you do the best you can as a parent too. So you got to be easy on yourself, because I'm sure your son, you know, he's a teenager, but I'm sure he's glad that you're his dad. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, it wasn't like it was a prolonged deal, but you know, there's journeys. We all go through journeys, right? So you know, there's not a roadmap to success, but some successful people that I know, most successful people, have a lot of traits are very similar, right? We're usually very driven. I'm a very driven person. I see things in a vision, and I can if you watch For Love of the Game, you know, begin the mechanism and like focus so entirely good on something that I don't see any of the things that get in my way. And I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs, we have that ability to kind of narrow it in and get really super. The problem with that is sometimes we forget to come outside that box and smell the roses, because we can always go to the next project, to the next project, to the next project, to the next project. And because that's just how I'm built that way. Like I'm actually hard from the get go. And so, but I also say, I love being a full-time dad. What makes me happy? Watching my kids grow up. And so I've just learned now to use my calendar and my time blocking to make sure that Corey doesn't get caught in a way, in something that he shouldn't be. Because like, I do like to work, but I also like, you know, when I'm not working, I get to spend time to do things. So that makes sense, right?
100%. It does. I learned this from my mentor. He's 82 now, but like, your best trait is also your Achilles heel. Like, so your focus and drive, like that's also your Achilles heel if you don't tame that, right? So you seem to have found some balance in the sense of what's most important. Because you can be on that wheel of chasing more and more, and at the end of the day, what's it about, right?
Yeah. So, listen, in my business life now, I'm financially free. I'm done, right? Like I got more money coming in every month than I'll ever need. Like, and it shows up whether I work or not. That's the power of passive income. I don't pay taxes because I play the game by, I play rich man rules, right? So, taxes are made by people with money that lobby in Congress, and so you just got to play by the rules. Real estate's a great vehicle for that, because especially now with this new cost segregation, the new tax laws. We bought a $10 million property, and I got to take $3 million of depreciation in year one. And so Corey doesn't pay taxes anymore. So now, and then I have passive income. And so business is good. So what motivates me now is not money, to make money. I like to keep score, but truly I have a new motivation. And this is really, so sometimes you got to challenge yourself. My new motivation is called supplier of fun. I want to be known as the supplier of fun to my friends, family, and the people that I care about. And what that looks like is like last summer, I took all my neighbors that I live in the same neighborhood. I've lived like for 15 years. It's not the Taj Mahal. It's not $1 million custom home. It's like, I don't know, bought it for $400,000 like, I don't know, 15 years ago. And so it's just an average little home. But I took all my neighbors to Hawaii because we wanted to go. I was like, hey, let's go. And so I paid for the whole trip. They actually paid for their flights, but I paid for everything else. And I supplied the fun. And to me, that's my drive now, is to create experiences with people.
Hey, Flip Nation, Flip Man here. Hey, awesome news, guys. I have created a new ebook on how to scale your business to 6 figures, fixing and flipping. I want you guys to check it out. It's free. Go to my Instagram at flippin_az and register to get your free ebook on how to scale 6 figures and fix and flip business.
And by the way, I'm getting ready to buy Bruce's house to finish the circle. It is for sale.
Love that. Supplier of fun.
Yes. Corey, you mentioned something about your motivation. You're very motivated. I always question, can you teach someone to be motivated in your view? Like, can you really teach a guy to go out and hustle, or how does that work?
I don't think you can. Well, I mean, I can show him the work that needs to be done, right? But I think it's either it's a learned trait or a skill set. Because I think about, like, man, I tell the story about my dad. So when I was a young kid, like 5 years old, my dad was a roofer, right? And all I wanted to do is be by my dad as a young boy, right? I mean, I was like, Dad, can I go to work? Can I go to work? Can I go to work? And this is roofing, and roofing's hard. And so my dad, I'm just going to share this. My dad taught me 3 things. I think this, if there's a way to teach it, this would be it, because this is what I got ingrained in me as who I am. But my dad said, he'd get me on the roof, and this is his best teaching moments. Because when I get up on the roof, my dad's a different man. I'm like, that's not my father. This guy here is a sailor. Because his vocabulary changed real quick. But he was like, I remember the first time he did it, he got down on one of his knees. He goes, son, today's going to be a lot of hard work. And here's how we conquer hard work. He goes, we make it a game. And the game that we're going to play today is who can get to the top of the ridge first with their shingles. And so, because there was another roofer on the other side, so it was just an A-frame house. And like, as a young boy, I'm like, that's all I needed. Now it's a contest. And sometimes contests, like that type of contest feeling, we make them internally. Michael Jordan just had his new thing that went out on TV, and he was talking about he would have to make little challenges or contests to motivate him to play to a different level, right? And that's really what it is. So there's the same trait showing up again, is that you can see it, right? So that's what my dad did. So now I'm like, my job as a young boy was to lay out the shingles. And my dad's like, pop, 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 pop. But that wasn't the real lesson that my dad was teaching me, actually, is when we got to the top, because we got to the top first, what he did next taught me everything about how to be a man, which was, he goes, son, because we could have sat there and basked in the glory. We won. Our side was done. But Dad showed me humility, and he said, son, let's jump on the other side and help bring the other guy's shingles up. So so that was a big lesson for me, right? So that drive to compete I think it can be taught in a way, but the right people, you have to embrace it, I guess, would be the right idea. So that was that. The second thing my dad taught me was to swing for the fences. So my dad got drafted out of high school when I was when he was a young man for the Cleveland Indians, and he got hurt, he got injured, but anyways, he never lost love for the game. So he was my little league coach, and he would teach me as a young boy. He said, "Son, when you get up there to go at bat, swing for the fences, right? Don't ever be ashamed. Take your cuts. Go full out. But son, when you do that, more often than not, you're going to strike out. And what you do next is everything." He goes, instead of making a big show and making a big fit of it, collect yourself, grab your bat, and start hustling back to the dugout. But as you're running back to the dugout, you're going to look that pitcher in the eye, the corner of your eye, And you're going to tell yourself, you may have got me right now, but I'm going to get you my next at bat. I'm coming, right? Again, that's a drive trait, right? I'm not ever going to give up, right? I'm going to keep swinging until I'm successful. And then the last thing my dad taught me was to always hustle, right? So dad would be like, son, if a coach says to go run around the flag post, right, or run around the light or whatever it is, he's like, you better be first. The only way you're not first is someone's got to physically beat you, because truly running around the flag post or whatever it is a mental thing. It's mental because no one really tries. And so I guess if I look at it that perspective, yeah, it can be taught. My dad taught me. That was the drive. Those three things taught me the drive to always hustle, swing for the fences, and keep trying. Basically, make work a game, find games to play that motivates you.
Yes, love it.
That's right.
Yeah, we learn so much from games when we're little. Like even in Monopoly, I always wanted to win. Like I'm so competitive, and like I teach my kids a lot through games since they were really young. So 100%, like that game translates to real life, right?
Yeah.
So
we play. I mean, we would cry. We were devastated if we lost Monopoly, man. I'd cry. Oh my God, I hate losing, right? But you learn to watch negotiations, right? Dad, trying to teach everybody how to negotiate, which is a skill set that you need in life. Those things. And so we've always been a competitive family, and so that was a trait that was taught to me and learned. So I don't know how other people learn it. Can you learn it when you're older? I think if you're coachable, teachable, you can. If you get in the right frame, if you empty your cup, you can absolutely do it. I really had a great benefit to get it early as a young boy.
And you are blessed, because a lot of people don't have dads, whatever. Maybe they're working 5 jobs, their parents. So to have that, Corey, you speak about mentors quite a bit. That's one of the things I'd love to do personally, is mentor others and see them succeed. So I've had great mentors. It sounds like you've had amazing mentors also in your life.
It's what changes the game. You can be book read all your life, but book read will not move your needle to the extent that having someone that you can actually really coach or talk to you and like guide you. Sometimes you pay for mentors. Sometimes you trade value, right? So in the beginning, my first mentor was Bruce. I didn't pay for him, but Bruce showed me a vision, which was good enough. That's all he did. But he showed me the vision, and I saw it clearly. And then I had a couple other guys. A guy, I'm trying to think of his name here. I can't think of it. But anyways, he taught me how to find deals on the MLS back in like 09, 010, how to get on the MLS and, get REOs and short sales. I was like, dude, that's awesome. That's how I found my deals, was using that technique. And he was a real mentor. Bob Norton was his name. And so Bob taught me the game early on. Dave Lindahl was my mentor in multifamily. And now I find that I pay for, I belong to masterminds and other group thought, think groups, because all I need is 1 or 2 new ideas that I can implement that change the game. And so I just find now that that's part of my continuing education. So I may not, this is the problem with most people that go to college. This is why I hate college, at least the thought of it, is a lot of people go there and get their degree, and then they stop learning at that point. They're done. And I never had that. So I've always been on a journey, right? On one hand, I'm a student, and I'll always be a student, and I still buy courses. I still learn. And then on the other hand, I'm a teacher. I'm an educator. I teach what I know, and I learn what I don't. And then there's also the big world. You don't even know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
You know what you know. Teach what you know, and then there's a lot of things you don't even know what you know until someone brings it into you. You're like, oh my God, that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to surround yourself with mentors.
Yeah,
and it's easier today than ever.
It is, with the advent of YouTube and our office is always open for anyone that wants to come in. We're down in Tempe, and it's interesting to see who actually takes you up on your offer. We got some really younger guys, 18, 20, they'll be like, Flip, yeah, I'll take you up. And they'll come and talk to me for 30 minutes about being an entrepreneur and getting in real estate. And it's those kids that are driven that are going to do things. And everyone's drive happens at different times, but like, you're right, man. There's so much mentorship out there. Go to REI meetings, go put yourself in the right places, and you're going to find that mentor, whether you pay financially or you pay with your time. But I would highly recommend getting someone that knows more than you know and whatever you want to do in life.
Always. That's at least in my book. It's called Copy Your Way to Success. That was why I wrote it, right? Because I was never the smartest tool in the shed, right? Like I always said, I'm not smart, but I knew how to attract smart people to give me ideas. And that's all I've done my entire life. I've never had an original idea ever. And I'm okay with that.
And the thing is that I tell my kids, it's like, there's ideas that are already out there, but you can make those ideas even better, right? Like, so that's what it sounds like you've done. Those original ideas, you just taken those and blown them up, like made them Corey's. Like,
here's my real process. When I learn something new, I follow it exactly in the beginning. I don't even try to deviate. I just like, if someone's being successful and here's their process, Corey says, I'm going to follow the process completely until I've become a Jedi master, right, of that process. Once I become the Jedi, then I can then say, okay, what do I like and what I don't like? Can Corey put his little spice on it to make it now my process, right? And it's usually a couple tweaks here and there, but I don't do it until I become a Jedi master at the original process, because that's where most people screw up. Because I teach and coach, and sometimes I just want to smack people. I'm like, gosh damn it, guys. Just follow my damn recipe, because the recipe works. Bake a cake. Follow my recipe. Once you get good at the basic recipe, you can then play around with some of the ingredients. But until you know what the recipe is, don't go try to recreate it, because you'll probably screw it up.
Yeah. I think you and myself, we do A to Z. We'll teach them, but they got to keep doing A to Z a lot. And then, like you said, put a little twist of Corey, put a little twist of Flip, whoever, put their own twist on it. But I think people want to jump to that next step without keeping on doing what you taught them.
They think they're already smarter. They think they're already smarter. And I'm telling you, what I've learned is most times they're not. And just stick with the original process first and get some success with it. Then you can modify it. I think that's the right route. I could be wrong, but my experience shows that it's what works for Corey.
You're right on. Yeah. So I really appreciate you sharing, Corey. I just have one more question. I don't know if Carly has any, but so I'm not into multi-units. I buy condos, houses. I picked up something for $875 recently in Scottsdale. That was my biggest purchase. So I know it's just another zero. Like, so what would you tell someone? I've been at single family for years. There's guys that are absolutely killing it, a few years in multifamily. Like, how do you get started, or like, what's the difference between single family and multifamily as far as your mindset, your investor mentality? I know you raise a lot of private money. It sounds like that's a big part of it. But like, what would you tell someone?
That is the part. Well, yeah. So really simply, it's totally two different things. I just wish I would have started with multifamily sooner, because it's a different legal, it's different process. It's completely different than single family. People say, oh, you got to do single family first. I don't agree. I think you could start. I wish I would have started. Now I just happened to start the way I did. And maybe that's okay, because if you got to make a little bit of money to kind of get a little bit of freedom. But if I had a JOB and I was coming out from that, just start with multifamily. Like, don't even try to kid yourself. And the reason now, and I want to preface this, the reason my net worth is got a lot more zeros on it than a lot of my other friends that started with me in the single family business that still have to every day you start from zero. I just want to preference anybody that's flipping homes or selling or wholesaling. If you're not doing rentals, you are starting from zero. You're a trader with a D, okay? But if you do it long enough, you might fail with AI. Sorry to say that. That's into the business because Robert talked about cash flow. Cash flow. He never talked about fixing and flipping and making a short-term money. He was always about the long-term income. And so,
right.
But the truth is, the money is not in real estate. Okay, I know that sounds really weird. The money's not in real estate. The reason I have more zeros than some of my friends is because I learned that the money is in the money. The money is in being able to attract capital. When I have capital that I can command and say, you should invest in this, and they say, you're right. And like we raised, like last year, we raised almost $20 million of private equity. That's a lot of OPM. And we're buying 10 to 15 million, $20 million deals with those types of monies. But that's the real push. Because I can raise capital, and I started single families raising capital. That's where I started. I started raising money for my single family fix and flips. If I was to do it now, I'd raise it for rentals and hold them for a while. But I was getting private people to give me their money and no like and trust me, because I was able to do that. And it took time. Like I didn't start Ninja. I started like, I'm just trying to get Carl. Carl gave me $75,000. That was my first win. So, but I just kept on doing that. And here's the thing with people with money. They love to talk about how much they're making and what they own. And they do it at the golf. Oh man, I got my buddy Corey. Corey's the guy my guy. And so what you learn is you take those guys to dinner and you say, hey, Carl, invite 2 of your buddies. And so we take them to dinner, have a really nice dinner, and all I got to do is show up and pay the bill. Because Carl's going to be like, Carl's going to do all my talking for me. Carl's going to do all the selling. And then at the end of the dinner when we're coming home, I'll call Carl and say, hey, how much money do we raise, Carl? Because Carl's going to tell me, right? And I didn't have to say anything. And that's the beauty of the money game. When you really realize it, it's not about, in my mind, I mean, apartments is the vehicle. It could be even single family is the vehicle. It doesn't matter. But my super power is my ability to attract capital and follow it. And so that's why that's what I teach, is really how to raise money. Because it is, if I look back, it is the one thing that's changed my life forever, man. And I grew up poor as poor could be. And so I've been poor and I've had money. Having money's more fun.
No,
but to have the time with it.
Time, freedom, everything you spoke about when we first started the call, Corey. Why? Last question, then I'll let Carly chime in if you got anything, Carly. So why is it that there's so many people in wholesale, there's so many people in fix and flip? Single family is like such a big market. Like I don't know a lot of guys like I know you that are doing multifamily. Most of the guys I surround myself, whether it's Pace, Steve, those guys, Justin Colby, it's all about single family. So why is it that there's not as many people in that space, do you think?
Listen, I think it's weird, but like I'll tell you just the opposite. I think because my radar is tuned to multi, so I see multi guys all the time. I listen to multifamily podcasts. Gotcha. When I go to events, I go to the same events, but all multifamily events. So it really is about how you set your frequency. You pick up the frequency that you're trying to look for. So change the dial, change the channel to a multifamily channel if that's what you think you're into. Because then you'll start seeing, it's like, you buy a red car, you didn't see any red cars, but now you see your exact red car everywhere. That's what it is. And
that's the thing in the brain. That's the thing in the brain called the reticular activating system. I learned that at Tony Robbins back in early 2000. So I bought a Mercedes, and I saw them all over. So that's interesting. That's the same focus, radar. So if I venture into 4, 10 units, whatever, all of a sudden I'll start seeing more multifamily opportunities. Is from what I'm understanding.
But it's a different world. So we find a lot of us go to bigger events for that. There's not any. It's not as local though, right? So you don't see a local multifamily guys because I think most of us, once we get into cash flow, we're kind of nocturnal by nature. Like we just don't go out and socialize. We kind of have our own nice little businesses going that we support. So it's not so local as like a local RIA, but it's definitely there's a lot of people out there doing it. There's podcasts. We have a successful podcast, the Multifamily Legacy Cast, that we talk about what we do, and there's lots of info out there. So it's just different. It's not the same, but there's a community for sure.
And so I have a feeling that we'll be getting together. I really enjoyed hanging out with you. And like I said, my thing this year is to either get like a 10, 12 unit, something of that nature. So once I get that running, I'll be listening to your podcast and guys that you're surrounding yourself with.
It really is neat to see the transition. I've had a couple of investors transition that I've taught, and because we're so conditioned to get those those wins, those wholesale deals, and or flips or whatever it is, right? And we start feeding off of that. And my message to anybody, and this is I don't care if you're multi or single, my message is start working on your passive game now. Mm-hmm. Right? Your flip and wholesale game will always be there. There's always ability to either wholesale and make some short-term money. It'll always be there. But you've got to put some stuff away because one day we're going to get old and crusty and you're going to want some passive income so you can sleep at night. Right? And so focus on taking some of your profits off the table and put it in that forever, that legacy portion of your portfolio. And most of us forget. And so if I have a message, don't forget about to set yourself up to eventually do what we all read in Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was to have cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Love it, Corey, because again, we can make 30, 40 a flip or whatever, but we can also spend that money on things as quickly as we make it on our wholesaler flip. So it makes so much sense. And that's always been what I've done is I've invested in long-term rental single family, and it's gone well. But I think the fact buying into some multi-units, that excites me personally. And
it's economies of scale, right? It's hard to buy 100 houses in one market, right? But I could buy 100 apartment building real easily. I could buy like 3 of those a year pretty easily. And so it's just economies of scale to have one grass to mow, not 300.
Yes. Fantastic. Carly, did you have any questions for Corey before we finish up here?
Yes. Okay, I have one really key question that resonates really well with me, what I have going on right now. So I am newer to the business world and launching my business. It's a dream come true. I'm fully monetizing it full time. And I've launched it. I launched it fully 2 months ago, but I've been in business for the past 8 months. But I wanted to ask you back when you mentioned that saying no and that 2-letter word, NO, it can be such a challenge. Back when you were at that point in your journey and you had that major realization, what led you to actually consistently learn how to say no? And is there any books that related to training your minds to learn how to say no and be okay with it?
I'm writing down my new book title of saying no, the power of saying no.
I need it.
But here's to answer your question, Carly. Every time I've said no, I've hated it. Right?
Yeah.
I hate myself, but I've conditioned myself to learn from saying yes. And like when you should have said no, but you said yes instead. And then you start thinking about all the guilt and the and the anxiety and all that stuff that comes with it. because you already know you should have said no, but you didn't. And if you remember those things, it'll help you kind of conquer it. Because it's like once you say no and you mean it, you're like, stop. And I sometimes I'm really brutal with it now. When I know, because I'm really super professional what I want to do. So if someone says, "Hey, Corey, I want you to do this wholesale thing," and all that, I'm just like, "Hey, man, I don't do that. That's just before you. I don't even need to listen to your pitch anymore. It's just no, I don't do it. Okay, so thank you very much. I gotta go." I used to be way more nicer about it, but I found that again, what's our most valuable commodity is our time. And so, Carly, I'll tell you and your listeners to practice, drill, and rehearse. The more you get more comfortable at saying no, the more you can actually do it, right? And when you come to those spots where you know you should say no, sometimes you can actually pause, right? Because you may not be in the spot where you want to say no, but you can say, hold on, let me think about it. That's another way to give yourself some time.
That's a big one. My mentor taught me that, Corey. Like, I don't need to say yes or no right now, but can I get back to you? Let me think about that and then process it and then go back and say no if you choose to say no.
An email, right? You can come back in an email. You can come back in a phone call. You can come back in a text. Hey, I've talked with my wife, or however you want to, however it gives you the least amount or the most amount of power in that fragile state. Because I love saying yes to people. I'm an entrepreneur, right? You guys are entrepreneurs. Great ideas come by about every 5 minutes. And truly, if we were to put the time and energy, we probably can make most of them successful. But it doesn't mean that they're all right for you. Right? And so that's why I was going to say you got to have your vision, mission, who you are, what you're doing first, so then you can analyze stuff and put your business on top. But it also gives you clarity in what you say yes to. Does it enrich my vision, or does it take away?
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
I love that, Corey.
Yeah.
It does.
Great question,
I believe it really does, Corey, because it's a balancing act, though, right? So setting boundaries, even with your kids, and saying no to them, like, it took me a long time to realize that that's what they need. So by saying no, I wasn't a bad guy. I was just like setting a boundary, and it helps me with my sanity too. So in the business,
let me give you one more piece too. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Well, one more piece to that, Carly.
Go ahead, Corey.
So, Carly, the other piece of that too is if you ask for time, right? Go back to a mentor or someone you trust and share with them that idea that you were thinking about saying yes to, right? Because sometimes they'll come back and say, "Oh, that's hell no," right? So, and like sometimes, like I'll talk to my wife sometimes and say, "Hey, honey, I was thinking about doing this and this, and so and so wanted me to do this." And she looks at me, she goes, "Are you out of your effing loving mind?" Right? She's like, "That's the hell to the no. No, we're not doing that."
Yeah.
And I was like,
"Right.
You're right." Right? But it gave me absolute conviction to go say no. Hey, listen, this is not going to work out, right? And so, but sometimes bouncing stuff off of truth. Now, if it's in business, go to business people to ask for advice. Don't go to friends and family because they always give you the wrong advice, right?
A little more emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Corey, because a lot of, like, we may not know if we should say yes or no, but if you have a trusted counterpart that maybe they see it a different way, that's great to take that to them. But again, it's a fine line because I don't know if you guys have seen Yes Man with Jim Carrey. I love that movie. So he goes and says yes to everything. And like, opportunity as an entrepreneur is saying yes to things, but you got to know when to say no, I guess. Is like, it's a oxymoron, but it's so true. Like, yes opens doors, but no.
Because it comes into play when too, like this starts to go into your personal life when you become super successful and your friends and your family start asking you for money, right? Mm-hmm. That's when you get to really use that no. Yeah. What I do is sometimes when I really want to say no, I look at that person and I think about that they're like a little whiny kid, like my little kids when they're little. Daddy, can I have? Daddy, can I have? And you're like, no, no. And so that's sometimes what I got to put people as I frame them up in my mind about when they're, Corey, do you want to do this deal? Do you want to do this deal? I'm like, no, get your butt over there. No, I'm not going to do that. I treat them like my kids. And so it helps me, it gives me that power to say no.
Yeah, Carly, that's a great question. And Corey, thanks for touching on that. I mean, Carly, obviously being in your 20s, you got a lot more life left than me and Corey, but I wish I would have been able to understand the power of no when I was in my 20s, because it's definitely, it's something that if you practice it, you're going to feel self-satisfied, and it's going to really free you up, I believe.
Yeah.
Carly, I didn't get the download from the mothership till I was 32, so heads off to you.
I appreciate that input. I've always struggled with people pleasing, so that's why I think it stems from that. But I did just grow my team, and I hired 2 people to start to free more of my time back, so I can feel a little more present. So I'm hoping that helps.
I think even women have a harder time because they're more nurturers, right? Women are just more nurturer in general, and so you want to be the mother, the nurturer, more so in business. That's why I find women sometimes are great business people because they're such leaders. They know how to pull people together. The other part of that is just to master that other piece, right? So sometimes you got to put on the big B and you got to say the no word, right? But it's okay. You'll do fine.
It's okay.
Just
awesome.
The fact that you're cognizant of the no word, that's a big step in the right direction, Carly. And then, like Corey said, practice at home, practice around your family, and then do it in the business world, because it gets easier the more you do it, like anything.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Awesome. Well, I had a great time getting to know you, Corey, and we're just right down the road, so I'd love to get a beer or take you to Starbucks one day. And I know I could raise capital, so I learned that from you today. I'm very good at network, and like you said, it's a money game versus the real estate game, which I learned from you today. So thank you.
Rock and roll, man. Hey, listen, again, thank you for having me on your show. Wonderful to talk about. I love talking about real estate. I love this business. It's changed my life extremely to ways that I never believed or dreamt that was possible. So the power of real estate is the game to play. Lots of ways to play it, lots of ways to make money. But I always just, challenge people that it all begins with the thing between your 2 ears, your mind. And, if you believe it, you can achieve it.
Love that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Corey. Enjoy the day, and stay cool, I guess. Don't, it's hot out here.
Awesome.
Thank you both.
All right, brother.
Hey, Flip Nation, Flip Man here. Hey, awesome news, guys. I have created a new ebook on how to scale your business to 6 figures, fixing and flipping. I want you guys to check it out. It's free. Go to my Instagram at flippin_AZ and register to get your free ebook on how to scale 6 figures and fix and flip business.